Let me tell you the story about how I went from almost flunking out of college to leading multi-million-dollar projects. When I first started college, I didn't really know how to study and I failed a lot of early classes. And I was told by my advisor that maybe I should look into something a little bit easier like business instead of being in the engineering school. And honestly, maybe I should have listened to her. Maybe I could have become an entrepreneur much sooner. But back then, I had a very strong sense of self and sense of worth and a very strong defiance. So if anyone told me that I couldn't do something, then I worked harder to prove them wrong. And I knew that there was no place in this world, no space in this world, no multiverse in this world where I did not become an engineer. I really wish I had taken that version of myself through all the phases of life. You see, during college, my story has always been the same. I was a first generation immigrant. I was the first to go to college from my family. I came from a disadvantaged background. I came from not the best high school, so I didn't really know how to study. I kind of got through high school through pure brute force. So obviously, when I went to college and I was working with some of the smartest students in the nation, I struggled a lot. But back to my story. You see, my story has always been the same. But in college, what I could have taken for my story was one, that I didn't belong, that I came from a disadvantaged background, that I didn't have the resources that other students had when I was growing up through high school, and that's why I couldn't keep up. What I could have taken from my story was a lot of self-victimization and thinking that everyone was smarter than me, although that last one does ring a bell. And yet, during this phase of life, that's not what I took from my story. And I never showed up this way to school. I remember working through nights, studying as hard as I could, doing all-nighters, and missing out on so many things because I was trying really hard to keep up at school. And I recall a specific week in grad school, I was working full-time at a grocery store where I did not sleep more than 1 to 3 hours every night to get myself through finals week. And still, my mind wasn't, oh, I don't belong here. And imposter syndrome didn't even cross my mind. All my mind was thinking, everything that I had absorbed from my story was, watch me succeed because I'm resilient, because I can outwork anyone. And I knew that because my story had proved it. Then all the work that I was doing for school, plus being able to reframe my story so effectively when I was in college, really caught up to me. I ended up being on the dean's list and accepted to Berkeley for my master's. Then I started looking for jobs everywhere and I applied to everything. I mean, public, private, construction, corporate, you named it, I applied for it. I practiced interviewing and I took with me that confident mentality that I had for my story, and I landed several jobs and accepted my first role as an engineer. Getting those job offers and landing my first job as an engineer felt inevitable. I always knew that this was going to be the end of my quote unquote story. I was so proud of myself and I felt like I had finally achieved all the dreams that I had for myself in my life, especially after all of the obstacles and hearing all of the, well, maybe this isn't for you, Carla, kind of narrative. I was so happy. So, never would I have imagined that this is actually when all the inner work needed to start. For whatever reason, probably because I was starting to mature and losing a little bit of my delusion, this is when I started believing the worst part of my story. I started truly believing that I did not belong in the corporate setting, and I started losing my sense of self-worth. Fortunately, I never lost my resilience and my ability to outwork everyone, which is probably what kept my head above water. There's a lot to the story, so I'm going to skip a couple of steps. It wasn't until I realized that I wanted to shift my career from contributor to project management and leadership that I understood that if I did not work on those inner wounds, if I did not do that inner work to reframe my story like I had in college, then I was never going to achieve my goals. Because as much as the fancy degrees helped me open doors and putting all of that work, all of that overtime helped me become a competent engineer, and learning all the technical project management knowledge helped me understand project management, none of this actually helped me become a leader and a project manager, which might surprise you. So what I did is I spent a year focusing on myself. I spent a year working on my inner self and trying to reframe what I got from my story. I worked really hard to stop believing the worst parts of my story and start reframing my story. That combined with improving my leadership skills like communication, authentic connection, and an inherent belief in my value. That's when all the opportunities really started flowing without being forced. And I landed a project management role that within a year had doubled my salary and had completely exposed me to multi-million dollar projects and mega programs. And yes, of course, the experience and the technical project management skills were a crucial part of shifting my career. But in all honesty, it was the recognition that I had to stop carrying that story about myself. I had to stop carrying the I'm not good enough story about myself. And it was when I stopped the self victimization that truly transformed my career. So these narratives that I took about my story showed up again and again in my career. I couldn't speak up in project meetings when I was a contributor because I thought that what I had to say carried no value. Or I thought that I was the only person in the room with questions and my questions were dumb. But it was that focused and continuous practice of reframing my story that really helped me transform how I showed up at work. It was the whole embracing myself along with all the technical knowledge that I had that truly helped me feel competent as a project manager and leader. So that's how I went from almost flunking out of college to managing large infrastructure projects. You thought it was going to be all these practical steps about working really hard and learning all these technical skills. But as it turns out, it's always the mindset shifts and reframing of your stories that has the biggest impacts on your career. All right, that's it. That's everything I wanted to tell you about this story. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.